hear their footsteps through the ceiling, their arguments through the plaster, the muffled bass of their late-night TV, but you never really know who's on the other side of that wall.
We build our lives inches from strangers. What happens when that unknown presence becomes a direct threat?
Our first story comes from a Reddit user named Clara Narjo writes, in 2018, she moved into her first solo apartment, a third-floor walk-up in a pre-war building, the kind with settling groans and temperamental plumbing. Her neighbor in 3B was a man she only knew as Mr. Abernathy, an elderly recluse. She heard him sometimes, a soft, shuffling sound, like slippers on old hardwood. Never a TV, never music, just the shuffle. The first oddity was small. She came home from work to find her doormat, a cheap welcome home mat, was perfectly centered. She remembered kicking it crooked that morning.
A small detail, easy to dismiss. But this is how it always starts, with a single thread out of place.
A week later, she found a single dead marigold placed on the mat. No note, no vase, just the flower, its petals already brown and curling at the edges. She threw it away, unnerved. That night, she was woken by a sound, a soft rhythmic scraping from the shared wall between her bedroom and Mr. Abernathy's apartment. It sounded like a fingernail dragging slowly, deliberately, across the drywall. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. It went on for nearly an hour.
Clara recorded the sound. Listen closely. It's not a rat. It's not the pipes. It's methodical.
The gifts continued. A bird's feather, a smooth gray river stone, a single rusty key that didn't fit any lock she owned, always placed dead center on her mat. The scraping became a nightly ritual. She started sleeping on the couch. The fear was a living thing in the apartment now, a cold spot that followed her from room to room. One morning she found a folded piece of paper. On it, in shaky, spidery handwriting, was a single word: listening.
This is the escalation point. The moment an indirect presence becomes direct communication. A claim.
She called the landlord, who was dismissive. He's an old man, he said. He's harmless. She didn't feel harmless. She felt watched. She felt known. The breaking point came when she returned from a weekend away. The air in her apartment was stale, different, the smell of dust and something else, something medicinal and sweet, like old cough syrup. On her pillow, arranged in a neat circle, were dozens of her own hairs, plucked from her hairbrush. In the center of the circle was another dead marigold.
He had been inside. The lock wasn't forced. This implies a key or another way in. The question is, which is worse?
She fled that night, stayed at a friend's house, and never returned, abandoning most of her belongings. Months later, her friend drove by the building and saw eviction notices on the door to 3B. Mr. Abernathy had died. When the cleanup crew entered his apartment, they found it almost bare, except for the wall he shared with Clara. It was covered from floor to ceiling with small pinhole-sized holes he had drilled through the plaster. And on a small dusty table, they found hundreds of pages of notes detailing every conversation, every phone call, every private moment Clara had experienced in her home. He wasn't just listening, he was chronicling.
Some walls aren't thick enough, and some neighbors want to close that distance in the most unsettling ways imaginable.
Our second story takes us to a quiet, suburban duplex. Mark and Sarah had just bought their first home. The other half was occupied by a man named Mr. Peck, a retired geologist who kept to himself. The first sign of trouble was the sound, a low, intermittent humming that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. It was most noticeable at night, in the dead quiet. Then came the tapping. Not from the walls, but from below. A faint, metallic tap, tap, tapping that seemed to come from the foundation of the house itself. It was irregular, like a strange coded message.
Mark was an audio engineer. He decided to investigate the sound scientifically, to rule out pipes or the house settling.
He placed contact microphones on the basement floor. What he recorded terrified him. The tapping wasn't random, it was deliberate. And beneath it, just at the edge of human hearing, was another sound, scraping. He tried to talk to Mr. Peck. The old man answered the door, his clothes covered in dirt and clay, despite it not having rained for weeks. He denied hearing anything, his eyes darting nervously towards his own basement door. The power in Mark and Sarah's house began to flicker. The humming grew louder, now accompanied by a strange electric smell, like ozone after a lightning strike.
This wasn't just noise anymore. It was affecting the physical infrastructure of the house. Whatever was happening next door was powerful.
One night, Sarah was in the basement doing laundry when she noticed a new web-like crack in the concrete floor, originating from the shared foundation wall. A faint, cold draft emanated from it. Mark took a hammer and chisel to the wall near the crack. After a few strikes, a chunk of cinder block came loose. Behind it was not insulation or earth, but darkness. An empty space. He shone a flashlight inside. It was a tunnel. Narrow, crudely dug, reinforced with rotting wood and scrap metal. It led from Mr. Peck's side of the foundation, directly under their home.
The police were called. What they discovered in Mr. Peck's half of the duplex was a geological obsession that had spiraled into a dangerous reality.
Mr. Peck had been excavating for years. His basement was a labyrinth of tunnels. He was searching for something he called the lodestone, a geological anomaly he believed hummed with a unique terrestrial energy. The humming Mark and Sarah heard was from a massive jury-rigged generator Peck had built, powering strange drilling equipment. He had tapped into their power line to run it, causing the flickers. The tunnels had compromised the entire foundation of the duplex. The house was condemned. Mark and Sarah lost everything. Mr. Peck was institutionalized, still muttering about the humming in the deep earth.
You can vet the person who lives next door, but you can't vet their obsessions or what lies beneath your own feet.
Our final story is perhaps the most disturbing. It deals with something more fundamental than privacy or property. It deals with identity. In a small Ohio town, a woman named Karen lived next to the Millers for over a decade. Tom, Cindy, and their 8-year-old daughter, Emily. They were the perfect neighbors. Barbecues, borrowed sugar, holiday cards. One summer, the Millers went on a 2-week vacation to a remote cabin. When they returned, Karen noticed something was off. It was nothing she could put her finger on at first, just a feeling.
The uncanny valley. The psychological principle where something looks almost human, but a few small imperfections create a profound sense of revulsion.
Tom Miller had a prominent eagle tattoo on his right forearm. Karen saw him getting the mail, and the tattoo was gone. When she asked about it, he just laughed and said, "Decided to get it removed. Too cliche." He'd never called it cliche before. Cindy Miller, famously allergic to bees, was now planting a garden full of bee-friendly lavender. She didn't flinch when a bumblebee landed on her hand. She just smiled at it. The most chilling change was in Emily. She stopped playing with the neighborhood kids. Karen saw her one afternoon, just standing in her yard, staring at the sun with a placid expression, not even blinking.
These aren't just behavioral changes. These are reversals of core identity traits. Allergies, cherished tattoos, a child's personality.
Karen started to feel like she was losing her mind. She looked through old photos from neighborhood parties. There was the tattoo. There was Cindy, running from a wasp. These people next door wore the faces of her friends, but they were strangers. She tried talking to other neighbors, but no one else seemed to notice. They saw the Millers, waved, and went about their day. The gaslighting, whether intentional or not, was profound. Driven by fear and a desperate need for answers, Karen crossed a line. When the Millers were out, she let herself into their home, searching for any proof that she wasn't losing her mind.
An extreme measure. But when you believe you are living next to imposters, the normal rules of society begin to fray.
The house was sterile, cold. The family photos on the wall felt like stock images. In the master bedroom, she opened a closet. It was filled with identical sets of clothing. 6 identical blue shirts for Tom. 5 identical yellow dresses for Cindy. In Emily's room, there were no toys, no drawings, just a single small wooden chair facing a blank wall. The bed was perfectly made, as if no one had ever slept in it. Then she found it. In the basement, inside a locked chest, were the Millers' wallets, their passports, their cell phones, and a stack of photographs from their vacation. The last photo was of the 3 of them, smiling by a lake, a dark, humanoid figure standing in the trees just behind them.
This, to her, was the proof. Not that she was unwell, but that something awful might have happened to the real Miller family, and that whatever came back was not them.
As she stared at the photo, she heard a car pull into the driveway. They were home early. She hid in the basement's fruit cellar, her heart hammering against her ribs, praying they wouldn't come down. She heard them moving around upstairs, not speaking, just moving. The sound of footsteps perfectly in sync. Then she heard the basement door creak open. She never provided a clear account of what happened next. The police found her 2 days later, wandering miles from her home in a state of shock. The Miller house was empty. The furniture was gone. It was as if no one had ever lived there at all. Who is on the other side of your wall? Are you sure? Are you really sure?